Hey guys, it's Kelly from Hip Hop Church Girl, and you are watching Shine. Today, we are going to meet Abigail. That's right. Abigail, honestly, you guys, is one of my favorite people in the Bible. Not just favorite women, but favorite people because I think that her life, what little we know of it, speaks volumes about the importance of wisdom, about the importance of good timing, about a number of things that we're going to get to throughout the 4 weeks that we'll be spending talking about Abigail. As you know, the story of Abigail is really short. Honestly, it's only found in 1 Samuel 25. I think she gets mentioned later on, but it's more so like Abigail begot. It's one of those chapters where they list a whole bunch of who had who. But we'll focus on 1 Samuel 25 for these 4 weeks. And it may seem like, that's kind of stretching it. How are we going to talk about one chapter in the Bible for 4 weeks? But honestly, there's so much in there, you guys. Trust me, we will have something different to talk about every single week. So before we really get too deep into Abigail and who she was, I do want to spend some time talking about the context in which she lived in because she doesn't just pop out of nowhere. You know, there's 24 chapters before the 25th chapter of First Samuel. So I'm going to give a little backstory about the time that she lived in. When Abigail was with us, she was living during a time that Israel first established a kingdom. And that's kind of a foreign concept to us because I think that living in a democracy or a representative democracy that we live in here in the US, we kind of think of monarchies as being old fashioned and being like, okay, y'all still doing that? Like, we over here, voting for our stuff. We don't have kings and queens and things of that nature, but can you imagine for a monarchy to be a novel concept, for it to be something new? Because that's the time that she lived in, which is a major culture shift. Because prior to that, Israel, they lived under, it wasn't really a government, it was more so judges. I mean, that's the book before First Samuel anyway. They lived with judges, and so these were people that were anointed and appointed by God, hello, to articulate judgments based upon the law. So not just the Ten Commandments, but the other thousands and thousands of rules and regulations that the children of Israel lived under. And so they governed in that way. They also went to battle at times. Later on, as we progress through the Shine series, we'll meet Deborah because she was a judge who went on the battlefield. Homegirl was fierce. And what's really important to understand is that establishing a human kingdom with a king or a queen, whether it's a regular monarchy or a constitutional monarchy, that was not God's idea. So let's just pause on that. Israel looked to the left and looked to the right and said, how come we don't have a kingdom? Everybody else got a kingdom. We want a king too. And God was like, oh, for real? For real, you want a kingdom? Oh, okay. Okay, this is not a good idea. I think I was doing a bang up job being your king. But since it's what you asked for, since that's what you will allow, I will allow it. And very much it's the same way now. God allows what we allow. Even if it's not a great idea, what God then did is said, okay, let me help you make the best of your bad idea and let me anoint someone to be your king. And so here we come with Samuel, the namesake of this book, who is a prophet and the last judge of Israel. And so, Samuel and God are having this conversation, and God is like, you know what, Samuel, don't even trip. They're not mad at you. They really rejected me, but that's cool. I want you to anoint this specific person to be their king. And when you anoint him, I want you to tell them that he's going to be trifling, and it's not going to be the way that you want it to be, but that's what you want, I'm going to give you what you want. Okay, so Samuel finds Saul. And, when you get a chance to read through First Samuel, Saul is kind of trifling out. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously God sees things that we don't see. But, he just really seemed, let's say, challenged. Apparently he was fine and he was from a good family, and that's all well and good. But, from the beginning, he really struggled with the need for approval. You can see it actually right in the beginning of when he was first receiving his assignment as being Israel's king. And long story short, because we don't have time to talk about everything that Saul did, he ended up really squandering the opportunity that God gave him, which resulted in Samuel getting the okay from God to anoint somebody else. And this time God said, I want you to anoint somebody who's after my own heart. And here is where we meet David, right? So if you've been in church at all, at any point in your life, you probably know who King David is. Now, David is the original Renaissance man, y'all. He was a shepherd, he was a warrior, he was a songwriter, he was a musician. He functioned in his life as a priest and a king. Essentially, I mean, he was fine too. Basically, David was bae. He used to work for Saul, actually. At one point, he was a kind of a musician, because Saul was a little cray cray, but he would calm down as long as David would play his harp or whatever. So Saul and David actually used to be like this. His best friend was Jonathan, who was Saul's son, and so he was really kind of in the family. And then it just went real left, y'all. And Saul ended up looking at David and being like, wait a minute, they like you more than they like me. You killing more Philistines than me. And wait a minute. And he started getting jealous, and that relationship completely fell apart. And Saul chased David through the wilderness for years. Years and years and years and years. Why? Because he knew that David was anointed to be the king, and Saul was not trying to give up that top spot, y'all. He was not. He was a hater. So at one point, David's in this forest and he's in this forest, and he ends up with this army of 600 men who want to follow him, who recognize him as the true king of Israel. And so he's living on the run, and one forest that he and his men go into ends up being in Carmel. And Carmel is a place where this businessman named Nabal, has all of his business. And so apparently Nabal was in the sheep shearing business. He lived in one place and his business was in another place. So it sounds like Nabal was pretty wealthy. And Nabal is Abigail's husband. And so what happens is that David's army is hiding. They see the sheep shearers. And so David, being a former shepherd, probably had some compassion on the sheep shearers that were out in the field, getting ready to, I guess, shear the sheep. So they're shaving off all the wool so that it can be cleansed and sold and all that good stuff. And so he stations his men around them to protect them. This could be potentially dangerous to be out in the wilderness. There are animals who see all this, look at all this food out here, all this food. I'm gonna give me a couple sheep. The army stationed around them to protect them from not only wild animals, but also anybody that might be hiding in the forest trying to steal from them. And so they stood guard all day, all night, never asked for anything, never took anything. And they got a little hungry. You know how it is living on the run. You can't take a whole lot of stuff with you. And so David decides to send a group of people to ask Nabal, hey, if you have some leftovers on hand, I really, really like to grab some food from my guys. We did this We did you guys a favor. We want just a little bit of food as payback. Well, Nabal was like, no. He refused his request, and here's where we meet Abigail. Now, one of the first things they say about Abigail is that she's beautiful. And so this week's topic really focuses on what the purpose of beauty is. And so as you review, I want you to think about, why do you think the writer of 1 Samuel made it a point to say that Abigail was beautiful? Do you think, as you read through the rest of 1 Samuel, that her beauty mattered? Do you think that it was a difference maker? And I want you to start thinking about what the purpose of beauty is. I think in our culture, sometimes we almost make people feel bad for being beautiful. We go from one end of the spectrum of idolizing someone for something that they had no hand in doing. It's not like, oh, I'm on the assembly line of faces and I pick this nose, I pick this eyes. You didn't pick any of that stuff. Like, you were born into it, right? And then sometimes, especially in the church, we sometimes make people even feel even a little bit bad for being beautiful in face and form. Or we downplay it so much that you almost feel like you can't acknowledge, yeah, I'm kind of fine and I know it. People kind of think that that's arrogant, or that it's useless. It's just something that you just have. Like, you have a pinky toe. What you need a pinky toe for? So I want you to think about what you think is the purpose of beauty, and then I want you to talk back. So after you get to the end of this week's session, I want you to share some ways that you create or inspire beauty in your life. It could be anything. It could be I do crafts. It could be I'm into fashion. It could be anything, you guys. But I want us to really take some time to stop and smell the roses. I think roses are beautiful for a reason. And really start to appreciate God-given beauty. Thanks a lot, guys. Can't wait to hear from you. Peace and love.